Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Lab Rats Entertainment Podcast. My name is Ezra, and I'm joined by Caleb and Sawyer. How are you guys doing today?
Pretty good.
Right.
Okay.
It's an energetic startup. Before we get started, just a couple of things. No news this week. Really, nothing too major happened. If you wanna hear about the really granular stuff, you can look it up on your own. But otherwise, nothing too major. And then the other thing is we are a go for the Game Awards 2020. That is on December 10th, and I did not have the times. Oh, I'm not. I think it starts at like 6:30 or something like that in 6:30 Eastern. I could be wrong. 7 p.m. Eastern.
Really?
Um,
That's awfully early.
yeah. So, and again, that'll be Thursday, December 10th. So we are all set for that. Jury's out on whether Ahmad will be able to make it to that or not, but hopefully he will be able to. And I think that's it. Look forward to hearing our reactions and our thoughts on the rewards and stuff. I think it's pretty safe to say that this year's show is really anybody's game. Every nominee deserves it. Everything. I don't think that there's a single game on the list of nominees that I think definitely won't win the awards.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, look forward to that. And yeah, again, no news this week, so we're just gonna jump right into topics. And Caleb,
Yep.
you have a couple of topics that I'm fascinated by. So I'm looking forward to hearing what your takes on these TV shows are.
Uh-huh. So I haven't been, because of how busy this semester has been. I haven't been able to watch that many TV shows, but there's two in particular that I did watch. And one of them I actually finished in the beginning of September, I think.
Okay.
And then the other one I just finished this week. So two of them are fresh off the bat. I think I mean, one of them is fresh off the bat, and I think I'm going to go start with that one. So this
Okay.
week I have finished up a a YouTube Premium show that moved
Yes,
to
that's
Netflix.
right. It started as a YouTube Premium show.
And that is Cobra Kai. And I should ask, have any of you seen Cobra Kai or the original Karate Kid films?
So I know I've seen Karate Kid 1.
Mm-hmm.
It is, the jury's out on whether or not I've seen the whole thing or if I've seen the whole thing in bits and pieces. But I think I've seen the whole thing before. I also saw the reboot with Jaden Smith.
Yes.
And then, and I haven't seen, and I'm not sure if I've seen any of the original sequels, but I haven't seen Cobra Kai.
The first one is really
the only.
Yeah.
So is this kind of going the way of like I'm trying to think of like a Halloween 2018 kind of thing where they just say, okay, Cobra Kai is the true sequel and ignore all the other sequels, or are they all canon?
I think they're all canon. Like, it's questionable about the fourth one, but I don't know enough about the fourth. I don't even think I've seen the fourth one because there's technically four in the originals.
Okay.
There's 1, 2, and 3, which are all like part 1, part 2, and part 3, and then there's like a fourth one that's it just has Mr. Miyagi teaching somebody else. I don't know if that is I don't know if that's canon because actually, I haven't seen it. I've only seen
I
that.
mean, it's
That-
just called The Next Karate Kid.
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah. So I don't know. Like I've seen one clip out of that whole entire movie, so I have no clue.
yeah. I mean, Hilary Swank is the star, or is like the new Karate Kid. So I don't know why she's like not in anything anymore. Like she's on very few things. But you know, she could appear. I don't think that there's any reason she couldn't. But
well, it,
oh,
it
go ahead.
I would say it's possible, but the thing, well, obviously they have to. The actor that plays Mr. Miyagi has passed away years ago,
Yeah.
and that is in the canon of Cobra Kai that he has passed away during this point. It is so yeah, it's a sequel after all these years. It's questionable about whether the fourth one is canon, but Cobra Kai is a sequel. It does take into consideration 1 through 3, although 3 is rarely talked about. It's really 1 and 2 that's talked about the most.
Okay.
Which is it kind of makes sense. 1 is a good film. 2, it's just all right. 3, actually 2 is it's a little better than just all right. It's like good. And then 3 is just bad. um, and so this one it takes place, I don't know, I think maybe 30 years. Like obviously it took place in the 80s and now it's in the present day, so it's like yeah, it's 30 years. It this show I have mixed feelings about. It's on one hand, it is very much it is very much, especially in the first season, a YouTube show. If that makes sense of like, it's definitely getting like the highest of budget for a YouTube show, but it's also the writing and the writing a little bit is and the budget does lack in that department, but it's also great because they're all, for the most part, besides the original actors, all new actors, and you don't recognize them, so you actually get to um, not have to have that previous, meaning you don't have any. Oh man, I cannot speak today. No actors have like previous experiences and other stuff, so like I mean they do, but obviously they got the job, but in like well-known stuff, so it's not like you know Tom Holland showing up or something, you know.
You're not like recognizing anybody based on, like, I saw him in Avengers or in Star Wars or something like that. Yeah.
So it's kind of nice. It still keeps up that that spirit. It's definitely written from the fans of the originals.
Okay.
So
yeah, that's some muddy waters right there.
I would say so, but I think that because it's so far in the future and they're playing with a certain twist of like a certain fan theory. Like the whole premise of the show is actually from a fan theory that like Daniel, who's the main character of the original movies, was actually the bully, and then Johnny was the was the victim, and it's actually a really compelling theory. If you ever look at that theory, it's really good. So that whole the whole show is based off of that, and so they're already kind of playing on a fan theory of a twist.
Yeah.
And so I think as in terms of a writing perspective, they have a little bit more of a freedom when it comes to that muddy ground when it's written by the fans type of thing.
Yeah.
So it's already, you know what I mean? It's just kind of it's really much of a fun thing of like checking up over the years type story. And I will say, like, it's a good story. Like, I really enjoyed the story. First season is just all right. The second season's really good, I think.
Okay.
But there are moments, and quite frequently moments, that becomes cheesy or impractical.
Okay.
If that
I can
makes
get
sense.
behind that.
It, like, I think of the second season finale, and I'm not going to go into what happens, but there's this particular moment where, like, we have the setup to this big fight, and the setup is so cheesy and so impractical that you're like, what 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 is going on? Um, and then once it starts, though, like the actual fight, it's really well done. Like the one thing from the beginning of the show to its most recent point is that they got better with the choreography. Like
Okay.
the fight choreography, the beginning of the show is very you guys look like you haven't like really done the practice or training for this type of thing. Whereas we get to the second season, and I think it's just because the second season got a higher budget. It was much more, meaning it had much more creative freedom. It felt like with the second season, um, it it's it's a fun show. Like now that it's on Netflix, it's just going to be honestly. This was YouTube Premium's selling point, so it's really sad to see it on Netflix now and like being so popular on Netflix because the moment it got on Netflix, everybody finally watched Cobra Kai. If you know what I mean, that makes like
Yeah.
it's unfortunate for YouTube, but it's great for Netflix right now because they're about to go into a third season in a couple weeks. And yeah, it's going to be successful.
So has it officially become a Netflix original now? Like, did it get dropped from YouTube, or is it on?
Yep.
So it's not going to YouTube Premium at all.
Nope.
Oh,
I
does
think
YouTube Premium even still exist, or is it just like YouTube TV now?
it's kind of it's getting the DC Universe treatment of like the like reshaping of what they are branding it as.
They so YouTube Premium still exists.
Mhm.
Because it
But
started
you
as
also
YouTube Red,
get-
right?
Yeah, YouTube.
Yeah. And so you're and for $11.99 you get YouTube and YouTube Music ad free offline and in the background. So, or at least that's what they say. So I don't know if that's worth $12 a month. I certainly wouldn't pay that, especially like if there's not like a really big show
Mhm.
behind it. But you know, I think that like there are a lot of people who would say that like YouTube Music is better than some of the other stuff just because there's a lot more on it. So that might be worth it to them, but otherwise I wouldn't necessarily say there's a lot here for YouTube
There's not
Premium.
really anything on. I think that's kind of the problem with YouTube Premium, as well as like what happened with Quibi and a lot of the other
Yeah.
services, is there can be good shows on these platforms, but we've kind of gotten to the tipping point where now there are so many streaming services that people are only going to be like, well, unless it's like Disney Plus where you have a massive show like The Mandalorian,
Right.
or like I guess pretty soon for Peacock with The Office going to be moving to that now.
Yeah.
A lot of these smaller ones, even though YouTube Premium is behind a mega giant like Google, we've gotten to the point where there are so many streaming services that people are going to be like, well, I'm already paying for
Right.
HBO, Disney, Netflix, Prime, and Hulu. I don't want to tack on YouTube Premium just so I can watch a Karate Kid spinoff. Like,
Yeah.
that's not
Yeah.
gonna get people. As good as the show, I assume, is, it's a lot of these shows are going to get buried under the fact that people don't want to pay for one other service just to watch a show that they may or may not like. Whereas you have Disney's got the benefit of having a significant back catalog and a high profile show. Same with HBO and now Netflix, just because they've been around the longest. But that's the thing with YouTube Premium is they no longer have a high profile show and they don't have a back catalog. That's really the only two problems.
Yeah.
The only other YouTube Premium show I kind of looked into was Impulse, but I didn't even end up bothering to watch it.
See, that was the thing of like, that's why I never watched like had gotten it, because I'm like, I'm not shelling out $11 a month for just one show. Like that's not my, I'd rather spend that on Netflix or Disney Plus, or what I mean, something that gives me more content. And I think I said it all those years ago. I'm like, it's not gonna last long. YouTube Premium's probably gonna die and it'll go to Netflix. And I think, I was right.
It happened.
It happened.
It happened. YouTube Premium is always going to exist because they won't pass up on a way to monetize their platform.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's not. Yeah, like I think YouTube Premium originals are probably dead in the water at this point.
And except for those like I wouldn't be surprised if there's some unscripted stuff that still happens, but
yeah, the unscripted and like
high profile scripted high budget show,
yeah,
kind of like a Impulse or something like that. I think those are dead. But something like, I don't know, I don't watch any of it, but I see ads on YouTube sometimes where they did like some kind of like just maybe some famous YouTubers, maybe they get like a reality show or something on there, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, like a podcast or something like that.
Yeah. A podcast or like a prank show or something, like just kind of like something that could be an added bonus. Whereas I don't think the audience who pays for YouTube Premium, like, I think that's kind of the thing is people don't really go to YouTube for scripted, like high profile content. They go there for like quick bites and of just like fun, like not necessarily lowbrow, but like low commitment entertainment, just like a quick 10-minute fun video, as opposed to a long running serialized like story. So I think that's,
I agree.
It's all about YouTube needing to find what the market is for their streaming service, because I think a lot of every streaming service since Netflix has just been trying to copy the Netflix model, not realizing that there are different niches that you can fill within the streaming market. Not everybody has to have the next Stranger Things or the next Mandalorian. There are different niches that they can fill. But that kind of reminds me, slightly off of that topic, but what with Quibi now going away, I wonder if, similar to what's happened with Karate Kid and Impulse and all those shows, if the shows that were on Quibi end up moving to another service.
I think it's highly possible, specifically with Quibi. I think that's highly possible it actually goes to YouTube, which is kind of the irony behind it.
I think it all depends on, because from as far as I know, I don't think Quibi ever actually owned the shows that were on there. I think the production companies did. So I wouldn't be surprised if for some of the ones that were, like for example, The Fugitive. I know that was supposed to just be a movie that came out, but the movie never came out, and so they just cut it into 10 to 15-minute chunks, and I made it into a Quibi original. So I wouldn't be surprised if it just gets re-edited and then put up on Amazon Prime or something.
Right. It the yeah. So that's part. That's the big problem with the show and why it got moved. But I think this show has a strong um, possibility of going on for a couple more seasons, just because of the way now they have a higher budget. Netflix knows that this is going to be successful. They're going to invest more into it. I think this has 3 to 4 more seasons of
Yeah.
of investment. Doesn't mean that in terms of story, meaning in terms of story, they may be like after season 4, they may be like, all right, we're done. I think it's not necessarily going to be a choice of investment. It's going to be a choice of story on when this show would end. So that's really good. I think. I think you're in a good place for a TV show to know that you can end on your own terms, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be good.
So
It's never good when a show is forced to go outside the bounds of its original vision.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to know that. The show is, but kind of getting back to the story a bit to give context. It really it follows both Johnny and Daniel, but it also follows the next generation of like their kids and stuff. And
Okay.
so they do a good job on, for the most part, on the story. It's really good. The problem is it's very predictable at times. But I think because you're just so aware of what the show is, that it doesn't necessarily become like a burden of how predictable it is. It's just more of like it's fun. You know what I mean? I think that's the way I would describe it, of like, yeah, I know these two were gonna fight. It's almost kind of like but I'm here for it. You know what I mean? It's one of those I'm here for it. It's not like one of those type of shows of like, oh, I could see this happening, and it's not really that interesting. I think it's still interesting even when it's predictable. But kind of getting back to the idea of the budget for a hot second of like season 1 to season 2, the big indicator is I don't know if I've told you this yet. Told you both this yet, because I have talked to a couple of people about this. In the first season, Daniel's son, he's barely in the show. Like the son, because he's younger. And
Yeah.
It's not really following him. It's more of his sister that they're following.
Okay.
But because he's definitely a stereotype of like the kid that's always playing video games stereotype. You all know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And like snotty and stuff. So he's that stereotype. But the big indicator of budget here is that in the first season, he's playing a PSP in a rich household.
That's funny.
And
That's
I'm like,
hilarious.
that's a bit retro. And
That's 2011 called in one sentence. Handheld back.
I'm like,
That's hilarious.
yeah, because this is a show that came out in 2017. Like, like the PSP
Wow.
is long dead. So
You're telling me nobody on the cast and crew had a PS4 or something like that?
exactly. And I'm like,
That's
man,
wild.
get this man a Switch. And then the second season, with no context whatsoever, he has a Switch.
He just has a
Switch.
Switch now. That's hilarious. That's funny. That's really funny. I like that. I'll be looking out for that if I ever watch this
Yeah.
show.
But it's just funny for that of like I pick up on that, and like that's very easy to pick up if like you're
Yeah.
our age type of thing. It's just funny because it's out of place, but especially saying that like he has pretty much access to his dad's wallet, so it's like I don't think he would be playing a PSP game all the
Yeah.
time.
That's really weird. Yeah.
The
Maybe he's just that kind of nerd.
yeah, who knows? I feel like that's what the directors were like.
That was their excuse. Was
Yeah.
like, yeah, no, he's just like really into PSP games for some
Right.
reason. Nobody knows
gotta
why.
play,
They're just into it.
Oh.
You're struggling to even find
He's-
a PSP
he's really
game to
gotta-
talk about. Oh. He's really into Birth by Sleep. Original Birth by
Right.
Sleep. That's his jam.
He really wants to play the what's the name of it? Oh, I forgot. Oh, what was it? The Jack and Daxter spinoff. Was it about Daxter or was it about Jack? I don't even remember what it was.
I don't know.
It was anyway.
It doesn't matter.
So yeah, it's a good show. I would recommend watching it. It's a fun time. If you've seen the originals and like them, you'll like this show. It's very much pertaining to that. And I think it does a good job.
Okay.
It's not well. The one thing that this show doesn't do is that it honors its source material and isn't like let the past die type of thing. Yeah.
Okay.
That I would rate it in probably a 7.5 first season, 8 out of 10 second season.
Okay. And you haven't seen the third season yet?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
coming out in a couple weeks, so I'll get you
Oh,
all
okay.
an update on that
Yeah.
very soon. Do you want me to go into Harley Quinn, or do we want to pass it?
Yeah, let's we'll go by person today.
Okay.
So, we'll end on Sawyer since he's got the console blowout for us. So yeah, share your thoughts on Harley Quinn, this quirky
right.
little animated DC show that seems almost entirely unnecessary to somebody like me, but what do I know?
Well, actually, I should ask: was there any questions about any last questions about Cobra Kai, real quick before?
So, I guess like the question I had, so like the comparison that I would draw to something like this, and it's not entirely a 1-to-1, but I think it makes sense, is like this strikes me as kind of like what Fuller House was to the original Full House.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you watched either of those.
Yeah, I haven't,
but like when I watched Fuller House, I kept feeling like the realization that I had was like, oh, this is just like the original, like the writing sensibilities and just like the whole atmosphere is exactly like the original show, but then all of like the jokes and the content and stuff was like updated to match like what we find acceptable in 2020. or in like the 2010s.
Mhm.
And I guess like, is it kind of like that in Cobra Kai, where it's like basically the same thing, but updated to be kind of like the same
Yeah,
tendencies and whatnot, but updated to be a 2010s thing?
I would say yes. It
Okay.
it that actually brings up a certain point. The originals are much more serious in tone.
Yeah.
Um, and this one definitely plays on the comedy because I think they just in a matter of they have time to play on comedy. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And most jokes land, some don't because it really is written by 80s fanatics that don't
Yeah.
quite understand modern um, jokes, if that makes sense. So like
Okay.
it's it's like uh oh what do I think? Oh yeah, I can't really come up with anything on the fly that is like that I remember. But there are some jokes
Yeah.
that are just like you I don't think you really know what's going on during this time, but
Yeah.
so yeah, it some that's uh but for the most part the humor is really good.
Okay.
Uh so yeah. What about you, Sawyer? You got any questions?
You guys are cutting in and out a little bit here, so I'm getting most of the conversation
Uh
here. I think it's my internet's being a little bit weird, so if I cut out a little bit, my apologies for that.
all
All
good.
good. All good. Um.
Uh, so I mean, Cobra Kai, I'm definitely I've heard good things
Mhm.
about it. I've never seen the original movie or any of that stuff aside from a couple of clips. So I I haven't don't have a ton of questions about that one, but I certainly have things to ask about Harley Quinn.
Okay,
Okay.
cool. Alrighty. So on to
All right.
Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn. Um, truth be told, I wasn't expecting much out of the show. I was like, I wanted to start the because I got HBO Max. I was like, I want to see some of the DC content, and I didn't want to start Doom Patrol because I thought, and it might be, I don't know, um, connected to Titans, so I didn't want to.
It is connected to
Oh,
Titans.
okay, cool. So yeah, that's why I didn't want to start Doom Patrol because I hadn't seen Titans. But I'm like, but Harley Quinn's a safe bet because that's animated, and that's probably its own thing. So I started Harley Quinn off of uh the impulse of like I really want some DC content. And
Yeah.
and I enjoy pretty much anything that's DC animated for the most part. Um, and but I knew very little to none about this show, and I gotta say, it was such a pleasant treat to watch this show. And it's like my best way to compare it is imagine an R-rated Lego Batman
Yeah,
Okay.
that's I've seen like 2 or 3 episodes of this
movie.
show, and I think that's a great way to describe it.
Because it's like they're playing on all the like the 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 seriousness of these characters and like pretty much boiling down to their stereotype versions of them, and it's really funny um, how they go about it. The show is it's quite fun. I think that the story is really good. The humor's there. Like they really
Okay.
landed on the humor. Uh, I think that the way they spin the Harley Quinn and Joker story, um, at first seems like, oh, it's predictable because this is like any other Harley Quinn story, in a sense of like she goes a Harley Quinn story that's on her own story, uh, where she goes solo and stuff and breaks up with the Joker and stuff. So the first couple of episodes are like, oh, we'll see what the story is actually about because
Yeah.
it's like it's very predictable in that sense, but I think that the cast is really good. Can't see what so in the story, Harley Quinn obviously her best friend's Poison Ivy, so they
Yeah.
uh, it's really their story, but Harley Quinn is basically trying to go. She's going on her solo act, but she realizes she needs henchmen, and so she recruits a bunch of uh, castaways in that sense of like uh, basically villains that are like uh, cast aside from the other villains of like oh they're
Yeah.
they're not on their level type of thing. So it her main core group um is Clayface, which is Clayface is played by Alan Tudyk, and and he's really playing up on that hammy uh, acting style uh, of a hammy actor, and he does he does it so good. So there's a lot of acting jokes that I find really funny
That's
with this
fun. Yeah.
character. There's Doctor Psycho, who's he's I'll say that. Moving on. He's just he's probably my least favorite character because all he does is kind of just yells and complains most of the show, which is kind of yeah. I don't really enjoy much of his character, but um, then there's King Shark. King Shark is quite funny. Uh, he, he's he King Shark is technically a computer repair. Uh, he works on computers, and he's a repair guy. So that's how he got recruited. He's just repairing a computer. And then who else is a part of the team? Um, it's been a minute. I think that's all of the team. But basically, the of you have all the main people there. You have the Justice League. You
Yeah.
have the Legion of Doom, and they're all they're all playing on the stereotypes versions of themselves, and it's really funny. Like uh, Superman and Wonder Woman are like the goody two shoes type things, and like Batman is just dark and brooding, but um, he's basically the Will Arnett version of Batman. He the 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 Legion of Doom is quite hilarious with their roster. Bane is basically um, making fun of the Tom Hardy Bane the whole time. There's a particular joke that's uh,
Yeah.
100% comedy gold. It is. It's so good. I
Yeah.
don't want to give it away, but it's really good. And basically, he's just they're playing on with that Bane of that he's kind of like a whiny baby type thing in like uh
Yeah.
in a Tom Hardy voice type thing. But
Hmm.
but what's really fun is this show goes all out on the most obscure characters. Like they really like to
Okay.
bring up obscure characters of like, Kite Man and the Condiment King. Like they it's just people you never heard of, and um it's so fun to see that, and it's a really fun time. I enjoy pretty much every episode. There's one particular episode, and I've talked about this episode with you before, Sawyer, because I was wondering if you had seen it. But there's one particular episode where it goes total meta, and it's a Batman centric episode, and and yeah, it's quite that one has some quite meta jokes, and it's really good.
Nice.
It's
Sounds like a good
definitely
time.
it's definitely on my list on HBO Max to check out. I've got that one, and I do believe also you mentioned it briefly, Caleb. I do think now the DC universe is done. I believe Titans is now all on HBO.
Yeah.
So there is that. But Harley Quinn, I guess the reason why I haven't started, because like from you and a bunch of other people online, like I've been hearing how great the show is. For me, it's just I haven't started it partly just due to because I don't love Harley Quinn as a character all that much, which I know it's like I know I've probably mentioned that to you guys before and on here, but like I'm always when it comes to the DC universe, she's used so much nowadays and it's just like with the new Suicide Squad game, the Suicide Squad movie, new one, Birds of
Yeah.
Prey. The show, like she's used so much to the point we're actually getting more Harley Quinn content now than we are Superman content, which is mind-boggling.
Well, I definitely say that was part of the reservations of like me watching the show was just because it's just been a lot lately. But I think that watching it, aside from like the first 2 or 3 episodes, like I felt like this was like it really felt like it was its own thing, and it was enjoyable to watch in that sense because actually I think it just feels different than any kind of Harley Quinn thing that we have gotten
Okay.
so far.
I did see a couple, it was on Sci-Fi Channel one night late, and I was flipping through channels, and it came on, and I was like, oh, I'll leave it on this for a little while, and it was actually, I thought it was pretty funny when I was watching it. I saw one clip online where it starts off like the opening of the episode is 2 fans of one's in the Snyder Cut t-shirt, one's in the Last Jedi is not canon t-shirt.
Yep.
And I was like, bro, why are you gonna come at me on this episode? I just started and you're coming at me like that. I know they're making fun of toxic fans and that they were using that as like shorthand. But at the same time, I was like, bro, really, you coming at me? And I just started watching your show.
Oh yeah,
that's pretty funny.
This show will like I think of like Commissioner Gordon in this show, and this show has a interesting thing where like it might damage your view of these characters, like with Bane and Commissioner Gordon. They play on so much of their past incarnations and make fun of it big time. Like Gordon is basically he's an alcoholic who can't really do well in being a detective anymore, and his whole arc is just further and further and further down a downward spiral that like I can't get over. Like I think I rewatched the Christopher Nolan movies a couple months back, pretty much immediately after I watched the show. And every time I saw Commissioner Gordon, I was like, "Oh no!" But because you have that in your head of
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
but they do a good job. I'm really glad it's getting a third season, um, which they haven't confirmed when that's coming, but the the show doesn't take that long to make,
Huh.
because I love how in the DC fandom, uh, Harley Quinn had her own panel and it was all animated, and basically she was like, "Give us a third season. It's cheap and easy to make."
It's just like, yeah, I know Batman keeps the lights on or something.
Right.
That's funny. I love that stuff. I love that stuff. That's the best stuff.
Yeah.
Is when
That I
people
kind
are
of met. Like, I definitely got to check it out because, like, I've been glad now. My reservations for, I mean, other than the, Harley Quinn not being my favorite of the characters, my only other reservation for checking it out was like, well, I'll check it out, but I don't want to pay for a whole other streaming service to watch it.
Right.
Now that it and Titans and Doom Patrol are all on HBO Max, I'll definitely have a reason to check it out now.
Yeah, and it's one of those type of shows that like it's not a binging type show. I mean, you can binge it. I binged it, but it's one of those type shows that you can basically sit down and eat watching it. Like it's 20-minute
Okay.
episodes. You can
It's one of
watch
those
one
chill
and enjoy it.
shows.
Yeah, it's a chill show. So,
Yeah.
excuse me.
I definitely got it on my list. I liked what I had seen, so
Mhm.
I'll probably end up starting with Titans first, just because those are I'm more attached to the characters that are in that
Right.
show as just main characters. But I definitely got Harley Quinn on my radar.
That might be quite smart to do, just because of I know how serious Titans is taking itself. So it might be a good palate cleanser to go to Harley Quinn after that, of like the way the
To lighten up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's such an interesting thing with like comic books. Everybody's always like, "Oh, well, it's a comic book; it'll just be this." But
Mhm.
it's interesting to see like how, especially Marvel hasn't done it as much recently because of the Disney ownership. But you look at DC, like at one like product to the next, the tone can vary wildly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like you could get something super meta and comedic like Harley Quinn or the Lego Batman movie, and then you can get the Nolan trilogy right like right before it. Like
Yeah.
it's so cool. You can just get these different projects.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree that that's like a strength of their properties is that they can and do just kind of have the ability to do whatever they want rather than needing or uh whereas like Marvel has a pretty set image and they can break away from it, but they tend to have like Spider-Man is always going to have a certain uh like tone to it, whereas like the genius thing that DC has been able to do is break away from that and do basically whatever they want with their properties. Um for better or worse, obviously. Sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. But
Yeah, and they no longer have to be committed to specifically fitting into an overarching universe or timeline. They can have
yeah,
a one-off, or they can have a separate TV universe or a movie universe. I
yeah,
mean, the movies have shown that clearly. We just got Joker, which is a one-off, but then we've also still been getting the DCEU movies. So
yeah,
pretty neat.
yeah, definitely. Caleb, did you have anything else you wanted to mention about Harley Quinn?
It No, other than like, if I talk further on about this show, it would be like more bringing up certain moments and like fun
Okay.
references. But it's well worth the watch. I would give this show
Yeah.
um a 9.7 out of 10. Like
Okay.
it's a strong show. It's a strong show for what it is. The animation's good. Uh, despite the panel saying it's cheap and easy, it I think the animation is very well done, um, and yeah, they do really well within their budget and stuff, and it's a great show.
All right. All right. Well, yeah, that's Harley Quinn. I will probably never watch it just because it strikes me as like a little too. Uh, is edgy the right word? I think edgy is the right word, but like edgy in a bad way, where it's like where it's not emo, it's gross. It's like not gross. It's there's a lot of like swearing and stuff that
Oh,
just doesn't
so you mean
Yeah,
that like
it's very like
that kind
crude?
of thing.
it's
Yeah, yeah, crude.
yeah.
That's a good way of putting it. Like
Here,
it's R-rated in a way that just like doesn't appeal to me.
it,
Um
that's the thing, Ezra. I feel like it's definitely like it's definitely past the boundary, but like I feel like at some points you would really love the
yeah.
show. So it's like yes and no and yes and no. It's kind of like um I don't know if you have seen it, but it is like Deadpool, in the way it takes its crude humor.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
I haven't seen Deadpool
okay, I figured.
actually.
All good. Um, but yeah, that's the yeah. I get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Meaning like you would enjoy some parts and then you probably wouldn't enjoy
Yeah.
other parts. Type
No,
thing.
yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's the kind of show that I think I would get. I would like go from like laughing to cringing at pretty
Mhm.
consistently. And sometimes I'm up for that and sometimes I'm not. It's just it's a preference thing. It's not a
Right.
comment on the show itself
Yeah.
necessarily. Um, so before we move into more next gen console excitement, um I want to jump back to the PS4 era for a little bit here. So I think it was at the end, like right at the beginning of uh this past year, so the 2019-2020 semester, uh where I had played the first two The Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel games. And I don't exactly remember what I said about them was, because it's been a while and I haven't listened to that show. But I will say that I liked them enough to be interested in following the franchise going forward, like with future English releases and stuff, because they're a JRPG franchise, a pretty niche JRPG franchise. Like they're lucky to sell 100,000, 200,000 copies over here in the West. Um, Actually, no, yeah, that's probably about right for the Legend of Heroes stuff. And so, but I liked them enough to want to follow the series, and I I picked up I picked up Cold Steel 3 before I picked up. It was like right around the time that Final Fantasy VII Remake and Persona 5 Royal were coming out. So, so like I played it for a little while and I was having a good time with it, but then I just dropped it to play Persona and Final Fantasy, and then I didn't pick it back up until later in August. Uh, so I didn't pick up Cold Steel 3 until later in August, and so it's taken me a while to get through that game, and then Cold Steel 4 actually just released in October. So actually, maybe did something come out in September? I don't know. It took me a while to get through, and then Cold Steel 4 came out like a week or two before I finished 3. and then
It says on Google that Cold Steel 4 came out September of 2018, but maybe that's just in
oh, that was the
Japan.
Japanese release.
Yeah.
Because it came out this year. It came out this year in English, and I think it was like October, like end of October 2020 is when it came out.
Huh?
And I have to say I did this with Devil May Cry 4 to 5. I beat Trails of Cold Steel 3 and immediately bought 4. So, I think that like that's a good tone setter for how much I liked Cold Steel 3. It's like between this game and Cold Steel 4, it's a contender for my favorite in the tetralogy as it's called. Um so I think like it makes sense to just mention just some context for these games. So obviously they're like the third and fourth games in the Cold Steel franchise, but then the overarching franchise is the Trails series, where there are 3 Trails in the Sky games and then uh two other games, the Crossbell arc, and then there's the 4 Cold Steel games. And then there's more coming after that, but these are the ones that predate Cold Steel 3 and 4. So that's 9 games that sort of in total for this franchise up until this point. So that should tell, at least the Trails stuff. So that should tell you how much just uh like how expansive this world is. Like there are characters from from 5 games ago that show up in this game and or in like both of these games, and you like know who they are because characters have mentioned them before, but you've never actually seen them before. Uh and like you will have seen certain characters before, and then characters who show up later will know who those characters are. um so there's a lot of that like especially in 3 and 4 there's a lot of context behind what's going on that if you've only played Cold Steel 1 and 2, which feel pretty localized to the the country of those games. So like if you've only played those 2 games, you'll feel a little bit like, "Oh man, I don't know what's going on." Or that's not true. Like you'll definitely feel like you've missed some context the um with 3 and 4 in a way that you don't necessarily feel that way with 1 and 2. But that said, I think that like so Cold Steel 2 ends on it's kind of a cliffhanger. It's the way that like um Strikes Back ends on a cliffhanger, I guess, where it's like the movie ended, right? There was like a pretty definitive ending to Empire Strikes Back,
Yeah.
but it was also like there's stuff we have to do. Like
Yeah.
there's obviously more to this story that we haven't seen yet,
Yeah.
obviously.
The story of
Um
the movie is over, but there's still tasks for the
yeah.
characters to complete going forward.
Yeah, and I think that like where I would say 1 and 2 feel like one game split across 2 games, 3 and 4 also feel that way. So like you're gonna play Cold Steel 3 and be like, "Oh man, I gotta get on Cold Steel 4 right away." Like there's like it ends like uh even more than 2, even more necessarily than 1 and 2, Cold Steel 3 ends and it ends on a pretty hard cliffhanger. Like it's literally like character says line, cut to black, game's over. um, and I was legitimately like, oh crap, like I need to play I need to play 4, because I was like I was going through it for most of the game, and I was like, oh yeah, I kind of like this. It's sort of a fun. It's more chill than 2 is. Like it's because the idea is that it's been I think 2 years since the second game or something like that, and the main character has grown up and is now teaching his own class of military students who are in sort of the same program that he was in. Um, and his but that doesn't mean that like he's not the main character anymore. It just means that like they added a bunch of characters to the cast that weren't there before. Um, and I have to say, I think that like so there are like 3 or 4 main things that I want to talk about with these games is that I think the combat system in 3 and 4 is the best version of that combat system that I've played, and it's a combat system that's not based on uh stacking turns the way that Persona is. It's more about managing turn order. And so you're buffing your speed, and then like you're doing everything you can to make the most out of each turn that your characters get to go, because sometimes bosses and stuff will be able to do lots of different things across like 3 turns in a row, so you have to like really make the most of each of your turns. And I really like it because they add a bunch of stuff that makes it not only possible to stack turns if you play your cards right, but they also add some stuff to they have variety based on the situation. So like some characters will be able to both heal and do damage uh depending on the situation. It's not like there's one option that's obviously the best option in every given scenario. Um, there are some instances, especially in 4, I felt like in the first half of 4, I felt like there was there's like one option that really prevailed, but then once the game opened up a little bit more, uh, you you get a lot more uh variety, and there are a lot of characters too, like in Persona and other comparable JRPGs. You typically only have like 6 or 7 characters, but in the Trails franchise we're talking like 20 to 30 characters. um
Like this is like an Avengers Endgame level.
say, say again.
So it's almost like this is like an Avengers Endgame level sized game, like
Yeah, no, well,
30 characters.
and we're not even, and this isn't even the Avengers of this narrative. Like there's the next game in the series that's already come out in Japan is the like we've got 50 characters to play as, like everybody's coming to the table, like and again, this is a turn-based JRPG, so it's like, and it's not a strategy RPG either. It's a turn-based, 4v4 JRPG, or maybe more than 4 sometimes. But like, so like it is like there is a very large scale. Now it's not very impressive graphically. I'll definitely say that about it. Like it's got a style that really works for it, and I think that like for what it is, the character models look nice, and the cutscenes do their job and stuff. But uh, it definitely feels like the story and the combat took precedence over the visuals, which is something uh, that I can forgive. in a lot of ways. But so there's that. The combat's really good. I think 3 and 4 is where the Cold Steel arc really feels like it hits its stride for me. Where like the first 2 games I liked, especially 2, because it was the scenario of 2 felt like a really good way to see some interesting moments for each of the characters. Three is at once like a return to normalcy because you go back to being in the school setting, and then things are also really different because it's just whole new characters, a whole new even like the campus is different and stuff like that. Um, so there's so it's so like it feels new, but also like a return to form, and uh and then 4 is 4 has the best, like I think the best implementation of like the story meets gameplay stuff, because it doesn't feel like the story has to accommodate for being a video game anymore. Like it feels like they figured out how their narrative can function while still being a video game. Because especially in Cold Steel 3, it felt like, oh man, we gotta get to point A to point B, but if we just like skip over some of these moments, then the ending is just gonna come in at the hour 10 mark, and we're not trying to make a 10-hour JRPG, we're trying to make an 80-hour JRPG. There were some pains there, but then 4 I think worked them out much in the same way that I think 2 felt a lot like it made a lot more sense from a pacing perspective. I think the narrative finally gets its groove in like I think like the second half. I will say the second, like the fourth, there are like not acts, chapters in 3, and then there are acts in 4.
Mhm.
And I will say the 4th chapter of 3 on is like all of my favorite stuff in the franchise, or in the tetralogy so far.
Mhm.
Like all of the best moments. I think my favorite boss fight is also there. I had like a terrific time in the 4th chapter of Cold Steel 3. Um, the ending of Cold Steel 3 is absolutely insane. Like, just so many different things happen that are like catastrophic, and you don't have like a good way of handling it at the moment. Like, you're not processing certain things correctly because it's all happening so fast. And then it ends. um, uh, and then from the ending of Cold Steel 3, 4 feels what's the best way to put this? 4 feels like it takes everything that was set up and fulfills it in a really nice way. It feels a little bit like some of the things you do are specifically for the purpose of not leaving any loose ends. Or if they are leaving loose ends, making sure that they're addressing that they are leaving loose ends. So that like, here are the people you need to pay attention to in the next like 5 games in this franchise. Um, so it's which isn't bad. It just does feel a little bit like there was like purpose behind it. Um, but overall, and the other thing I will say is that while I like the series and I like most of the characters, I'm still like a little unsure if I like Rean Schwarzer as a protagonist at the end of the day. Like, I like him as a character, but as like a protagonist, it feels like there's like there are almost too many things happening to him at any different point, and too many like sources of input from so many different characters that it feels like you lose a little bit of where his character arc is supposed to go from here. Um, but it does feel like four, especially towards the end of four, it feels like they kind of settled on what they wanted his character arc to be about. Um, and in that sense, it really works. Uh, but yeah, I still think he's definitely no like uh he's no like Sora or Cloud or any of the Tails uh pro tags. Like he's nowhere near that level of beloved for me, but he is like he does work for the story that he's in. Um and I think uh the real strength is the fact that by the end of four you're playing not just as characters that you've like recruited, or you're not just playing as characters that were uh like always on your side. You're playing characters who were like a boss fight, or uh like there's a section at the end where there are like certain like a bunch of teams get set up to all go do this one thing, and like those teams include characters who had like their own boss fight and their own sub story and stuff. And I thought that was really cool, especially in four. They like do a whole character arc with this one character who you've been following since like Act 3 of Cold Steel 1, and they do like uh a whole arc based on like what she's all about, and then like at the end of 4 it feels like they really brought that all to fruition, where like in 1 you definitely would have not been faulted for thinking that she was like the most minor of characters. um so I really like that about the franchise, and I think that like it having beaten 4, I want to go back and play the other games that kind of established the context for 4. Um, so that's sort of going to be, in between major releases and stuff. That's going to be what I'm focusing on, because there's not like a lot of JRPGs and not a lot of just stuff out right now that I'm super interested in. So I'm going to be going back and looking at that. I'll have some thoughts. I'm looking forward to gaining more appreciation for certain characters that I saw that weren't necessarily like you obviously don't get the whole story from their appearances in the Cold Steel game. Um, so I'm looking forward to that. Um, and I will say, I think that like I guess what I would say about the franchise is like if you find yourself having played like a Persona game or a Tales game or something like that, and you want something similar, uh and you enjoy like some really neat world building, because that's where the Trails series really like that's what it's known for, is it's like really focused world building. uh then I would give the Trails series a look, because it's especially the Cold Steel franchise. It's 4 games. They all you know uh right now on PS4, I think they're 1 and 2 are $40 a pop, but I assume they go on sale for super cheap. And then 3 and 4. 4 is a relatively new release in the States, so I wouldn't expect to see it go on sale for a little while here. But 3 I've seen even as low as $40. Uh, so I would give them a try. I wouldn't say that they're like a priority terms of like what I would recommend for JRPGs, but I think they're definitely worth a look, and I had a really good time playing them. So, and I think that like the story is like the intrigue and like the politics and the uh like all of the really interesting ways that the characters interact with each other is worth the price of admission for me. So yeah,
Sounds pretty neat.
yeah, it is like it is the closest thing you will ever get to like the Lord of the Rings for video games. Like whoever wrote this obviously took some cues from what Tolkien was trying to do. Uh,
Well, we'll
or
have to
or
see if
maybe
the
not.
we'll have to see if that upcoming rumored Lord of the Rings RPG is able to get anywhere near it.
Well, if it's made by a Western dev, I would question their ability to do so because Western devs have fallen into the trap of if it's going to be text, it needs to be voice, and that's a that is a lie.
Yeah.
They're like I think that like the Trails series has a lot of dialogue, and it gets by on having so much dialogue because it doesn't all have to be voiced. Persona does the same thing. Some stuff is voiced, like the really important stuff is voiced. Like if you um uh like the big story moments, and then like the most important moments in each like social link and stuff are all voiced. But then like the little stuff doesn't need to have a voice behind it. But Western devs are not going to stand for that. They're going to get that voice actor in, and they're going to be talking for 48 hours straight to make sure that every single piece of dialogue in the game is going to be voiced. And I commend them for that, but it does like make a restraint on an unnecessary restraint on the amount that they're able to put in their game in terms of lore. Unless you go the Destiny route and then just like write stuff out, and then like you just write a bunch of side stories and then put them in the game, but don't actually like have anything based on them in the game. Or if you do, it feels so far removed from the like actual lore that it feels like the lore was pointless. But that's a whole different thing. So I would, I would recommend it for like for lore buffs. It's like this is the franchise for you. You're like if somebody feels like starved for a video game series that has like really good deep lore that's not totally nonsensical, because most video games lore is either not deep or totally nonsensical or both. So if you're looking for lore that's neither of those, then Trails is like right up your alley, I think. So
Okay.
yeah. With that, that's basically all I had to say about it. So Caleb, or no, not Caleb, Sawyer. I talked about PS5 last week, and so now I want to hear your opinions on not just the PS5, but also the Xbox Series X. So you have the floor.
So I'll try to keep it brief because I don't want to go into it like it could take me, or because I got plenty to say on these. But I think which one would you guys like to hear about first, the Series X or the PS5?
It's up to you, Caleb. I'm indifferent.
I'm intrigued on the Series X.
Okay, so I have not yet had a chance to play a game on the Series X yet because I've been doing a lot of installs. That's mainly because of my internet and not necessarily the fault of the Series X. But I will say, the setup was very easy. I did not expect it to go as fast as it was going to go. A lot of it is set up through the Xbox mobile app. Yeah, I mean, it was pretty much just plug in and it transferred all of your settings that were in the cloud from the Xbox One over to the Series X. So That was a good thing. I think, and we kind of already knew this. My first thought when booting up the Series X was how it's essentially, and we kind of already knew this, a beefed up Xbox One. So like it's the main dashboard is basically the same as the Xbox One, except for rather than having like using the bumpers to go through different tabs for games and then movies and TV and the store and all that. Rather than doing that, it's just all on the one main page, and then the store page, game page, and movies and TV page are all like rows on that main dashboard. That's really the only main difference. I think, but yeah, I mean, I think that my first impression was that when loading off of a disc, it's really fast. Like I was installing Gears of War 4 earlier, and it like the internet update took a while. Taking it off the disc was much faster than offloading it on the Xbox One. I was impressed by that. Even obviously, because I knew it was like, well, if it was installing, it would be fast, but like I didn't think it would be that fast, considering it would still be kind of bottlenecked by the disk drive. But it moved pretty fast. Yeah, I think the Series X, it would sound bad, but at the same time, because there really isn't a whole lot for me to say about it, which is kind of good considering it's like it's pretty simple. It's just like I opened it up, I plugged it in, I put all my settings into it and started installing things. It was really quick setup, good to go. Knock on wood, but I've had no major issues, no glitches. Everything's just worked fine. So actually, I take it back. The only glitch I had was for some reason last night when trying to install the update for Gears 5. It was saying that it couldn't connect to the internet, even though when I would go to the settings to check my internet connection, it would say I was connected to the internet. But all I had to do was restart the system and everything was fine. Other than that one minor inconvenience, yeah, Series X has been great. I will get back to you guys when I actually play a game on it. I did boot up the 1993 version of Doom. So I've booted it up, but I haven't played it. I wanted to test the speed and how fast things would boot up. I tested the speed of the SSD with that and the Master Chief Collection. Master Chief Collection booted up blisteringly fast, and that was what was really impressive because it takes forever on the Xbox One.
Nice.
Especially also, it was the way I was able to tell with the smoothness was on the Xbox One booting up that game when it's going through the opening logos of saying Microsoft Game Studios. Every time it cuts from Microsoft Game Studios to 343 Industries, it would stutter on the Xbox One between those two logos every single time I booted up.
Huh.
Whereas on the Series X, no stutter whatsoever.
Nice.
Yeah, so, I mean, I guess that's really it about the Series X, which is thankfully good that it's just, it turns on, it runs, and it's essentially just a 4K, it's a consistent 4K 60 is kind of the way to describe it.
Yeah, which is a really good thing to say about the console and it's kind of what it's going for, right? Like it's not.
Oh yeah.
It's which is why they kind of dropped. Which is why the only thing that's changed is the 1 to series rather than really anything else.
Yeah. I did notice the other big thing outside of the speed was that it is insanely quiet. Like the only time it has made any noise is the disk drive when it's spooling up the actual disk. That's it. Like if you're installing anything or you're playing anything, it has made no noise the entire time I've had it in here, and I've had to do some pretty significant installs, And the only time it's made any noise was when it's initially reading the data off the disk. That's it.
That's
really good to hear.
a score
Yeah.
one for Microsoft
Or
on that
not
one,
here.
I guess.
Yeah. So moving into the PS5. I've actually surprisingly I have enjoyed my time with the PS5 so far, but I have had a couple of glitches that I did want to point out. I was going to see if
Yeah.
as a review ran into any of these
Mhm.
and pull up my list here.
Who's got a
Oh, you need
list?
a list.
Oh no,
Yeah.
Oh boy.
that's never
Most of
good
these
to hear.
I should clarify that most of these are pretty minor, but I
Yeah.
want to mention them regardless. Okay. Let's see, where were they? I'm going through my notes trying to find it. I have not um used rest mode yet because I didn't want to risk it because I had heard I don't know if it's okay with mine, but I had
Yeah.
heard online that rest mode was bricking some people's consoles, so I
I've
didn't want
heard
to.
what I've heard mixed things about this. I've been using rest mode, and the main thing that I've heard is either that it's while running a game, just like any game, or that it was specifically Spider-Man remastered. So
Okay.
I uh, I don't have any hard confirmation on this. My console has not bricked, so and
That's
maybe
good.
I'm just tempting fate, but it uh hasn't totally just gone to the dumpster yet. So um I wouldn't worry personally. I'm not like too worried about it, but I think it's like until you have like hard confirmation that it is gone, it might just be worth being
Yeah,
better safe than sorry.
that
But
was my thought
that's up to
process.
the individual.
I
Yeah.
do know they Insomniac said they did patch Spider-Man Remastered, so the issue
Yeah.
if it was an issue with Spider-Man Remastered, that's taken care of.
Yeah.
So I should mention I'll do these couple glitches I have first, and then I'll go into the pros that I've had so far. So my only glitch issues I've run into so far was now, and I'm gonna start with the ones that are relatively minor. When I was on the PlayStation Store trying to type in one of my download codes that I had for Spider-Man Remastered, it would it had this weird typing glitch where
Huh.
I was typing in the code and then I was typing in like the letter C, and eventually it froze and then kept stuttering and would not like the letter would, and I couldn't keep typing in other ones, but I couldn't erase the previous letter, so it just had
Huh.
stuck on me trying. It was a really weird like glitch. All I had to do was back out and then start typing in the code again, and it worked fine. But it was a weird glitch, and I'm not sure how it
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah, I've had some of those like there are one-offs that'll happen that
Yeah.
I don't think are entirely uncommon.
Yeah, I mean, and most of these that I am mentioning here they're not really so much problems as they are inconveniences.
Yeah.
Um, like some of the other ones, and now this was the one that spooked me the most was when I was on the home screen sometimes on the dashboard. It first happened with the PlayStation Store, where I was on the home page, but PlayStation Store didn't load, and I couldn't go anywhere else. So like I couldn't. There's no way I could go to any other app other than starting a game. I couldn't do anything else. And I restarted the system, and then the PlayStation Store worked again. And then that same issue happened later, except it was for the events page, and it would not let now. But this time, rather than moving the other icons, it would not let me move anywhere other than events. I couldn't move left to the PlayStation Store, and I couldn't move right to my games. But the rest of the events wouldn't load. So the only thing I could do was press the PS button on the controller, and I could access those buttons, but I couldn't access the dashboard.
Huh.
And
Was
again,
this
restarting the system solved it.
just out of curiosity, was this after you had like pressed the input um to go to the events page?
No.
Hmm.
Yeah.
See, that's what's weird to me is like like if you had, then like in my mind, it would kind of make sense that like it might get stuck if it was still trying to load.
Yeah.
But otherwise, there's no good explanation.
Yeah,
for it.
that was the weird thing is that it would have made sense if it got stuck if I clicked on it, but it was just I
Yeah.
had gone back to the main menu after stopping playing Astro, I think, and it just
Yeah.
got stuck. Then the only other one other than that one was no, there's really two. There was one time, and it's the same thing as the Xbox. The internet just randomly disconnected.
Hmm.
But I know it wasn't my internet because my phone and the Xbox and the rest of my family's devices were all still connected. And I kept testing the Wi-Fi on it, and it kept saying it just would not connect to my router. And of course, again with the other issues, restarted the system, and it connected just fine to the same router.
Yeah.
So most of my issues that I've had here were solved by either backing out or just by restarting the system. But it's frustrating to like every time there's a minor inconvenience, you got to restart it again.
Yeah.
Um,
That is frustrating. The one thing I will say is just to kind of match up with you, I have had the internet thing happen where it just like randomly tells me that I've disconnected. But I will say that for one thing, if you're not playing online, it doesn't like really affect your
yeah,
like it won't kick you out of your game like it would on PS4 sometimes. Um, and that was only if like that was because the version I was like it wasn't my primary PS4 or whatever. But then uh but I'm also in like a really bad spot in my house for internet, so it doesn't my experience is maybe not indicative of everybody else's in this
yeah,
specific instance.
yeah. Mine was not like. Luckily, I wasn't playing an online game. It was really just an issue of I was installing the campaign
Ah,
for Black Ops, and so I was like, really, which we'll get back into when I get into Call of Duty. But that was really the inconvenience there. But like, I'm not really too worried about most of these inconveniences that I've mentioned thus far because they're not really problems, like I said, so much as just being slightly inconvenienced. And I'm sure Sony's going to patch them because these are issues that can be patched out, no problem.
oh yeah.
So I'm like, I'm not. It's people are like, oh no, the PS5 is already terrible. I'm like, no, it's not. It's just slightly inconvenient. Like just some slight inconvenient glitches. It's gonna be patched, no problem. Like I'm not
Yeah.
worried
Right.
about any of them.
And honestly,
The only one oh go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say glitches are gonna happen. Like,
Yeah, I mean with any launch console.
right? Because they just don't know what happens, and
Yeah.
meaning they do know enough, but like, they don't know what happens when there's so many people playing these games and what each games are different, and it's just
There's
like,
so many variables.
yeah, there's so many variables that they don't exactly know. So it is expected with any console.
And I will say the other thing to mention is that the PS5 is more different than the PS or than the like it's more different than the PS4 than the Xbox Series X is to the Xbox One.
Yeah.
So there's like um and they were going for this like hard generational jump. So yeah, it was just kind of bound to happen that this kind of thing would come up. Like it's obviously not ideal, but it is just kind of a consequence of it being a new console.
Yeah.
Um, which
Yeah, I
doesn't
mean,
necessarily excuse it. It's just kind of the matter of the fact.
yeah, because like I've been seeing. I mean, this happens with every piece of new technology. It's not even just consoles for the fact. And like, while I may not have had any issues with the Series X, I'm sure there's out of the millions of people who bought it, I'm sure there's somebody out there who's having an issue. So it's. I mean, it's not like fun, but at the same time, but the most of these issues that I've had and most people have had are relatively minor. So, like the people who are being like, "Is this the end of the PS5?" Like, come on now, like,
Right.
Yeah.
yeah. But the one issue that I did have that was, while it is an inconvenience, it's also one that I don't know how Sony had this as an oversight, because this is not really a variable about an internet connection or
Yeah.
anything like that. This was with, and I don't know if you had games, Ezra, but with cross-gen install has been specifically for me with
Oh.
Assassin's Creed Valhalla was the big one. So my issue was, well, I guess it's kind of hard to explain, but when I put the disc in for Assassin's Creed Valhalla, I bought the PS4 version.
Yeah.
And because it was cheaper and it was the one I wanted to get since I had both versions on it. With Valhalla, when I put the disc in, of course, being a PS4 game, it immediately prompted the PS5 to install the PS4 version. And of course, for that, the first problem of that is it doesn't clearly explain how to get the upgrade. But I knew how to get it, so I went to the viewing the product page on the PlayStation Store. You have to click view product so you can see it in the PlayStation Store. Then you have to go to the right because it'll initially prompt you to buy it, but you have to go over to the right and click free upgrade with the disc in the system. Then it operates like you're purchasing, even though it'll just say $0.00.
Yeah.
Confirm it, then it starts the download, but it doesn't cancel the PS4 version. It then proceeds to install both the PS4 and PS5 version to your hard drive or your solid state drive, I mean. So, which creates, and I was like, okay, well, no issue. I'll just delete the install before it gets too far of the PS4 version. But every time you put in the Valhalla disc for the PS4 version, it prompts the PS5 to install it every single time you put the disc,
That
which is
super weird.
it is incredibly frustrating, and it takes, like, with the already limited amount of storage space that the PS5 has, it trying to effectively force you to installing two versions of the same game onto your solid state drive is just going to take up more space than necessary,
Yeah.
which is only going to get worse when updates and DLC start to come out. So, yeah, I'm sure this is something that Ubisoft or Sony, whoever has to do it, can patch out, but it's really annoying to like them go through this whole messaging of you get a free upgrade, it's going to be seamless, it'll be easy, no problem. But
Yeah.
finding the upgrade was not too difficult. But the confusion also, it does not specify outright without a little hidden menu which version you're actually playing.
Yeah.
So like
It is very like non-intuitive. Like they really want you to download the PS5 version from the library from the
yeah, well,
store, right? Like that's what they're going for.
there's that, and if you're on, so do you have Spider-Man Remastered?
Yeah.
Okay. When you're on the game icon, does it say with like by the nameplate at the top, Spider-Man Remastered? Not the big banner on the screen, but in the name in the top, like next to the icon.
Well, I haven't installed Spider-Man Remastered because I just haven't gone back. I'm just
Oh,
waiting
okay.
for a time to go back to it. But I will say the most confusing thing about it is that they both sort of like both versions kind of coexist and it's hard to tell which one is which.
Exactly. That's been the thing that I've seen is with the icons for certain games, it doesn't do a good job of separating which is which version. So for
Yeah.
mine, once I installed Spider-Man Remastered, I thought I had it pulled up, but it was still Spider-Man 2018 because it said PS4 next to it. But you have to click the whatever they're calling the version of the options button now. Click that, scroll down to game version, click game version and switch from PS4 to PS5, and then it'll adjust so you can launch the game digitally, which
Yeah.
is not intuitive. And I've seen some reports of people online with it being happening with Black Ops, of some people playing Black Ops Cold War, the PS4 version, on their PS5 and not even realizing they're playing the PS4 version of the game instead of the PS5 version, and then
Yeah.
proceeding to be underwhelmed at the way the game plays and looks on the system, not realizing they're playing the last gen version. So
Yeah.
it's a frustrating issue, and I'll give Microsoft the leg up on this. That smart delivery makes it incredibly simple to get the best version of that possible game on the hardware.
Yeah.
Whereas PS5 could really do to have something similar to smart delivery in this case, because
Yeah.
it becomes very confusing and frustrating with not only figuring out what version of the game you're actually playing, but once you have the version installed that you want, it prompting you to download the other version every single time you put the disc in.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, I think that like what they were going for was and it's still kind of this way where like every game and potentially even every like franchise has its like own hub when
Yeah.
you install it. So like DMC5 Special Edition, if you click on it and you go to like like um the like view version or stuff or something, whatever it's called, um it'll show Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition, and then it'll show like Devil May Cry 5, and then I guess like the demo or something like that afterwards. I don't think there was a demo. I don't remember what like the three versions are, but like it'll show you three different versions of Devil May Cry 5, and
Oh,
it's all under the banner of Devil May Cry 5 series, not just
yeah.
DMC5. It's
Okay.
not just DMC5 Special Edition. It's Devil May Cry 5 series. So
Yeah.
it's
That's the exact same thing that Spider-Man Remastered and Assassin's Creed Valhalla both do, is under the little game version thing. Every version of the game that you own is listed under that banner.
yeah, and so like I get what they're going for, and I think it's a smart idea as we move on in the generation, but right now, for good reason, it doesn't seem like anybody knows how to take advantage of it. And
Yeah.
that's not like a dev's fault. It's just like the way that, or it's not even Sony's fault necessarily. It's just like the way that it shook out.
Yeah.
But it does cause a lot of confusion with like, well, how do I use this? Like, what am I, like, which version am I playing? Where like Xbox really just streamlined the crap out of it.
Yeah,
So
I think that's like normally it wouldn't be that big of a deal if Microsoft hadn't come up with a much more intuitive and easy system for doing so.
yeah,
Like I think it is neat that they'll allow you to easily access which version of the game you want, but I don't think Sony really realized, why would I want to install the PS4 version of the same game if I have the PS5 version already installed? Like it doesn't make a whole, like, I mean, I get there's people who probably want to for comparison's sake and all
yeah,
that, but
journalists.
I think there should be an option, even if there isn't an option in the menu or something, to maybe not have it auto install a disc as soon as you put it in. Like on the, I hate to keep comparing it to the Xbox, but on the Xbox, for example, when
That's
you
the
put
comparison.
when you put a disc into the Xbox, for example, you still have to install it. But once you put it in on the Series X, and this was the same way on the Xbox One, you have to actually click on the disc icon on your dashboard before it would start to actually install it. Whereas, like, I kind of wish they did something like that. Whereas every time I input Valhalla, maybe now that I have the PS5 version selected outright, maybe it won't do that. I don't know. We'll see. I'll have to do some more testing on that. But it's just, that was really the most inconvenient thing that I've ran into so far, even more so
Yeah.
than the previous glitches that I'm sure will get patched. Is this is something that while it's not necessarily an issue with the system itself, it's an issue with like convenience. And I think another example I had was I just recently downloaded Vader Immortal, which is the 3-part VR series
Yeah.
that they did. And what makes this one extra confusing is even though when you buy it on the PlayStation Store, it's labeled as just Vader Immortal, a Star Wars VR series. When you download it, it downloads as 3 separate episodes because it was originally released on Oculus as episode 1, episode 2, episode 3.
Yeah.
And you launch them as different episodes. But on the PS5, that game version thing, like we were talking about with DMC5 and Spider-Man and all that, instead of it being different versions of that game, you have to click on game version to select what episode you want. Which is weird because technically episodes 1, 2, and 3 are different games on the PS4, whereas they're listed as different versions of the same game on PS5.
Yeah.
Which is weird.
Yeah.
That is weird.
It installed fine, but it was just I could foresee there being a lot of people who would download that and be like, "Well, where are my games?" and just not realize where they are.
Yeah, which is not unfair, right?
Yeah, and I think it's like I want to get it clear that like I like the system. I've had the fun that I've had with it is I think it's a great time. I think it's the unfortunate thing with it is though the Xbox has just created a much more streamlined process, which unfortunately makes Sony look bad because that's the one downside with going with a generational leap is while it may be a bigger deal to some people, it's going to have more kinks that you have to work out, whereas instead of just opening up the box and it just working.
Yeah, growing pains were bound to happen with this console.
Yeah.
And I think that's not like an unfair thing to mention about it.
Yeah, and my reasons why I'm not too worried about it is I know that this console is going to get years of support going forward. So I know Sony's going to patch all of these minor issues that I have probably by early next year at the latest. So
yeah, it's not going to go the way of the Ouya.
No, like I mean, these things are selling out incredibly fast. Trust me, Sony's going to patch these little minor issues very quickly. So like I'm not too worried about it. That being said, the positives that I had.
Yeah.
This thing boots up real fast.
It does.
I did not expect.
It's kind of scary.
And I had heard this in all the reviews, and I didn't quite know what to expect, but the controller is awesome.
Yeah.
The DualSense, I tried a little bit of Astrobot. I liked it. It has a lot of cool Easter eggs for PlayStation fans. Some little cool nods here and there. I'm not going to spoil where it is, but there is a Solid Snake reference in that game.
There is.
So I would say if you get a PS5 and you're waiting for your games to install in the background and you need something to keep you busy during that time, try out Astrobot. It's pretty.
Yeah.
It's not something I'd probably spend a ton of time playing now that I've got most of my games installed, but it was a neat little time. But the DualSense, I used my first next gen game that I played was Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. First off, as we discussed, this game is massive. It took about on my internet probably about a good 8 hours to install the multiplayer component and the zombies component.
I can't stand it.
That wasn't even the entire game because then I was like, oh great, it's done. I then booted the game and then saw, oh well, if you want to play the campaign, you have to download the campaign pack. And I was like, all right, fine. How big is that going to be? And then I see, oh no, it's not campaign pack. It's campaign packs plural.
Oh, no.
There were 3 campaign packs, each roughly about 20 gigs that you had to download in order to play the campaign. And
which is enough for a full game, by the way.
What?
60 is enough for a full game in general.
Oh, I know. Like that's that 60 gigs is bigger
Yeah.
than both every other game. I shouldn't even say both. Every other game that I have currently installed on my PS5
Exactly.
is smaller than just the campaign install for Black Ops. Miles Morales is like 50 gigs.
Yeah,
Like,
not
it's-
even. It's 40 gigs.
Yeah, and Spider-Man Remastered's around the same thing. Assassin's Creed Valhalla, same. I don't know, after updates it might be a little bit more, but roughly the same. It's like 60. Why is just the campaign about the same size as most other games? The campaign's not even that long. I beat it all in one day.
It escapes me. I don't understand it.
But yeah, once that was frustrating because I didn't really have a chance to play anything when I got home on Wednesday. Thursday is when I started installing everything, and by the end of the night, I was like, finally, I can play Black Ops. I get into it, and then it tells me, nope, you still got an install to do.
I'd be so.
So I let the campaign download all night, and then I finally started it up yesterday. When I actually got into the campaign, it was great. I enjoyed it. It's a nice spiritual sequel to the original Black Ops. There's some interesting twists and turns in there. Caleb, I don't know if you'll be happy to know this or not, but it does not, at least in my experience, does not erase Black Ops 2 from canon. Like it's like that the flashback missions to the 80s in Black Ops 2, they're not overwritten. So I was happy to see that. Obviously, Black Ops 3 and 4 don't really matter in the case of this because they're so far in the future. But it's a nice return to form. Some nice nods for Black Ops fans here and there. It's pretty short. I beat it in probably about 6 hours. Not bad at all. I never really expect Call of Duty campaigns to be long, but it was still pretty short, and for a $70 game, it was pretty short.
For a $70 game that takes up a quarter of your storage on a next gen console.
Oh man, you gotta stop reminding me.
Yeah.
Is it a quarter? No, it's closer to a sixth.
No. Well, I mean, after having Miles Morales, Spider-Man, Call of Duty, and Assassin's Creed installed, that's half my hard drive or solid state drive. That's 4 games and half my storage is used up.
Yep. Well, how big is AC?
AC is like 50, 60 some.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're all less than 60, he said.
Yeah, they're all around 60, and Astrobot's COD's the only one that's not around, and then Astrobot is obviously much lower than that. It's like 15.
Right. Yeah.
But,
See, my thing is that it's not a great amount of space, but if you don't have COD, then it does make things a little better, I guess.
And I will give them credit for the fact that they do allow you to break it up into chunks. So if you only want the multiplayer, you can just install the multiplayer only if that's what you want. Same thing with zombies and campaign. Comparing it to, I guess there really isn't a whole lot to say for the campaign. It feels like a Black Ops campaign. It kind of feels like if you took Black Ops 1, set it in the 80s, but then you had the gameplay of Modern Warfare 2019. That's kind of the way I would explain it. It's a little faster in terms of the gameplay. There's some puzzles that I didn't expect, like the puzzles that there were. You have to, in order to play, there's 2 side missions, and the side missions, you don't have to do these puzzles, but completing these puzzles before you go into them, because it's technically a spy thing, will give you a better. I don't know if it affects the ending, because there are multiple endings and paths this game can take, similar to Black Ops 2. I don't know if getting the correct answers on the side missions ended up affecting the ending I got at all, because I've only seen the one ending that I got. I'm going to maybe play through a couple of the other endings later. But that was pretty neat. I will say, mission design is much more diversified than Modern Warfare was. Like, most of Modern Warfare was go here, fight this person, go here, shoot this person. Like, it wasn't very varied. aside from those two, like the missions like Clean House, where you're going through in night vision goggles and being more tactical. There isn't a mission like that in this game, but they do vary it a little bit more. So, an example being one of the standout missions was, without spoilers, you are infiltrating a top secret facility, and there are branching ways that you can tackle the mission. It's I almost to the Hitman games where they give you one objective and then you can choose however you want to accomplish this objective. And there's like probably 5 or 6 different ways that you could accomplish the same goal, and it was very much more open mission design than I'm typically expecting of Call of Duty. That one was cool. I'll say the downsides to it is the protagonist you play as is another one of the silent Call of Duty protagonists, which I thought we kind of moved past by this point, but it's another one of those. You do design your character. You don't design their appearance, but you can kind of design your background, which gives you some stats. Your alias, they just call you Bell in the game. That's your alias that you have. There isn't too much I can say because I assume, Caleb, you're probably gonna play it.
Yeah, eventually.
Yeah,
It's one of those.
Also,
it's one of those games that will be like, I'm saving for next gen.
Oh yeah.
I don't know.
I would say, yeah, it's yeah. I would say if you're gonna get it, I'd get it if you, because you don't really play a lot of the multiplayer, do you?
I used to, but yeah, I haven't. I haven't seen any gameplay from the multiplayer, but I haven't been big on Call of Duty's multiplayer in a while.
Yeah. The only multiplayer I did offline, because I don't play for PS Plus, I did offline against bots. They just added in their version of the Nuketown map on Thursday, or no, I guess it was Tuesday, and it was pretty fun. It's the biggest twist. I guess that's moving out of the campaign stuff because I liked it, but there isn't really a whole lot to say other than it's a Call of Duty campaign. And then if you're a fan of the first Black Ops, you'll like this, but it was slightly disappointing that there was not a huge amount of appearances by the characters from the first game. They're more side characters in this game, which it's telling that the 2 side missions are when you play as the legacy characters.
Man.
There are other missions where you play as legacy characters, but there aren't that many missions to begin with because it's a relatively short game. It was not overly apparent where they were stitching stuff from Raven and Sledgehammer into this. Like, Sledgehammer Games, their name does appear in the credits. So my guess, and you see this in the trailer, so it's not really a spoiler, but there are segments in Vietnam. My guess was that Sledgehammer was working on a Vietnam game and it wasn't going very well. So the segments and assets they had from the Vietnam game that Sledgehammer were making were retooled into fitting within what Treyarch was planning on making. And that Treyarch seemed to primarily handle the multiplayer and the zombies, and Raven took care of the campaign. Which is, it seems that like it was very clearly that they were just taking the foundations of what Raven or what Sledgehammer had and just finding a way to like fit it into mixing with what Treyarch was trying to do, which explains not only the short length, but the fact that Mason, Woods, and Hudson are not the main characters. They're in it, but they're more side characters. I think it was like, and that's of course only speculation on my part. It's just the fact that the Vietnam stuff is just essentially glorified flashbacks, and it's like, well, we have to fill out this. It's kind of like when you would get into, like when you're in Afghanistan in Black Ops 2, where it's like, this isn't like explicitly needed for the story, but we have
Right.
to pad the campaign's length out a little bit, so we'll add something tangentially related
Mhm.
like that, where this isn't directly related, but let's throw it in because we need more more missions,
Yeah.
and we don't want to throw out the assets that they already made. Yeah, I think campaign's worth a playthrough if you like Call of Duty campaigns. It's very much a spiritual successor to Black Ops 1. I think the 80s aesthetic was pretty cool. And the cutscenes look great. The game changer for the game, and I haven't played any of Zombies yet. I haven't really played much of the multiplayer. But the DualSense controller
Mhm.
is really a game changer for this. Every time, with every different gun, when you aim down the sights, there's different pressure that has to be applied for each weapon, and it varies from weapon to weapon. So
Hmm.
That's really
if you
pretty
have
cool.
just like if you have a regular pistol, it's going to take like no pressure at all. But if you get like a sniper rifle, it takes an extra amount of pressure to fully aim down the sights.
I
Uh,
like that. That's cool.
and you can feel the recoil when you press down the right trigger. Like I can see the multiplayer crowd not liking it because it might affect
Right.
the response time.
Yeah,
But
no, that
I
definitely seems like a for campaign only feature.
yeah, like it was awesome in the campaign, and when I was playing offline against bots, I didn't bother me, but that's also because I'm playing offline against bots, so it doesn't
Right.
really matter as I'm not doing the competitive esport thing. But it's yeah, I think that was what really kind of made the game feel next gen was the controller made it very much like the adaptive triggers are not just a gimmick; they really
Right.
are a gameplay feature.
The only way
Uh,
the real problem I would see with that is I don't know if it is. I assume it is if it's cross-platform multiplayer because
oh yeah,
then you're getting a different you're getting a real different response time to
yeah.
someone that's like on the Xbox side of things.
Yeah, they do allow you to turn it off in the Black Ops menu. So
Okay.
if you want to do multiplayer without the adaptive triggers, you can go into the menu and turn it off. So
Yeah.
there is crossplay. So it's a good thing they added that.
Yeah.
But yeah, for somebody like me who really just plays the campaign and then zombies offline, it was pretty neat. And I should mention I did play the game in 4K, 60 FPS with HDR and ray tracing,
Mm-hmm.
which is like I played it with all the works.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to do it in 120 FPS because my TV doesn't support that, but I was able to do it with everything else. And I'll have to say, the game it looks pretty, but it's not always immediately apparent of a jump coming from PS4 into PS5. The frame
Yeah.
rate certainly was, but the HDR and the 4K, as great as it is, it's when things are moving as fast as they are in a Call of Duty game, you don't always get that time to fully take in what you're actually looking at and how good it actually looks
Right.
because everything is moving so blisteringly fast.
That's something I observed within the trailers. I felt like there wasn't really that much of a leap, but honestly, it's just Call of Duty and a lot of things going at once. But
Yeah, but I'm sitting a little bit farther back from my TV, so if I was up closer, maybe I would notice more of the detail change. I don't know, but the frame rate was pretty consistent throughout, which is more than I can say for a lot of other Call of Duty games. So yeah, it's a good time. It feels next gen. It's still clearly one of those like inter-gen games, like kind of how Call of Duty Ghosts was back in 2013. It's a better looking and better playing and overall better game than that game was, but it's I guess the better explanation would be that I don't think we fully hit true next gen Call of Duty probably until next year's installment.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's fair.
Yeah, and hope I can only imagine how big the file size is going to be on that game.
Oh my gosh.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
You have a year.
Yeah,
I'm assuming
yeah,
it's It-
I assume it's Infinity Ward.
yeah, I assume it's Activision Infinity Ward. You have 1 year.
If they don't fix it by next Call of Duty, there needs to be some kind of like there needs to be some kind of thing that happens to make them
Well,
figure
people
it
are
out.
gonna have to end up just uninstalling it because
Yep.
it's gonna get to a point where it's too big for the actual PS5.
Yeah. Yeah, like 50 I think like 100 gigs can make sense in my mind if it's like um if it's like Final Fantasy 7 where or like FF15 even where it's like it's going for realism and it's like massive, right?
Yeah.
Cuz like or it's going for hyper realism and like there are so many assets in the game that like it has to be 100 gigs. So like I think it's like reasonable from that perspective, but for like a 7-hour campaign and then a bunch of multiplayer maps, 120 just seems
Well, I
way
think
too
it's more
high.
than that.
Oh
It-
well,
Oh yeah, it's way higher than that. It's like
I think it's the closer to 180.
yeah, it's 180 to 200, I think.
No, and the season 1 update is
Yeah.
coming on December 10th, so that's gonna be even more.
That's why I jumped a
Oh.
fourth of the SSD.
Yeah.
Because
Like I see what you mean. Like it's now granted the game. I'm sure most of that file size is just high res textures because the game looks great, and the character models and everything looks next gen. But at the same time, there are other next gen looking games that are on this platform, like
yeah,
Demon Souls, for example, that has high res textures and everything, and it is a bigger game. And Call of Duty, like, yeah, there's high res textures, but you also have a lot less content.
yeah.
So
Well,
because
and
most people are going to be
even-
playing.
And even like Spider-Man Miles Morales is like that game is just like one of the most gorgeous things I've ever seen, and it's 50 gigs.
Yeah.
Like it's not, and it's got like the entirety of the original Spider-Man map in it. So like, yeah, I just don't know why it's like this. Why are you like this?
I mean that pretty much does it for Call of Duty. Is I enjoyed
Okay.
it, but it's good for fans of the series. It's not a game that I'm probably going to think about very much now that I've beaten it. Aside from every time there's an update, I'll probably just first off complain about the size of the update, and then I'll probably just test out the new maps, and then probably not touch it again until the next season.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good, but now that I've played through it, I'm moving on to Spider-Man now. So that'll be.
All right.
But yeah, overall PS5, I like it. It's definitely a generational leap, though the resolution and HDR isn't always apparent, though that may be on me due to how far back I'm sitting. And maybe that also could be to Call of Duty because, as we mentioned, things are moving by so blisteringly fast, you don't always notice everything.
Yeah.
But
I will
I'm excited to see where
also-
things go.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, that's definitely the draw. I did want to mention real quick, just while we're on this topic, I did want to say that I complained about the MC5 being too dark, and that was entirely my fault. I just had to mess with the brightness in the game, and it fixed itself. So that's not that. I complained about that last week, and I just wanted to clear that up, just in case.
adjust
anybody
the
was like-
icon to where it's barely visible, Ezra.
I'm so sick of having to do that in my video games. You have no idea. I'm like I'm too focused on getting that kind of thing exactly right to be spending any time
Yeah.
on it.
Same. Like,
I
that was
just
my thing.
I do not like it. It's not something that I enjoy about
Well,
video games.
and I think that's going to be a problem for people with trying to get the next gen experience of these consoles. Is a
Yeah.
lot of it is going to be with HDR and 4K. HDR, as Caleb will tell you, there was one time he and Ahmad were,
Yeah.
we were hanging out, and Ahmad and I were trying to set up the HDR of my TV because it's such a pain to get it calibrated
Yeah.
to the right way.
I don't know. My TV says it has HDR, but I don't know if it has like the right HDR for PS5 or anything like that. So I just turned it off. And like, games still look good in 4K. Like it's not like I'm not gonna like lose sleep over not having HDR. So like
Yeah.
I'm not too worried about it, but it is still like annoying. Like I hope that we can get some solves for this in the future, because like right now HDR is just so like it feels more complicated than it has to be.
Yeah, like 4K is not a problem, but HDR is confusing. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
no,
it's there. I wish there was a
definitely agree.
streamlined process to set it up, because it's like I understand the concept and everything, but I wish it was like you would just go through the system settings. Obviously, I know that's not the thing for the TV, but having
Yeah.
to get it on the right TV settings first, and then getting the right settings on your PS5, and then I also got to make sure it works with the Series X, and then
Yeah, it's
adjust the brightness within the games. like,
it's a whole thing, and it
Yeah.
shouldn't have to be a whole thing.
No. But hopefully, I think that's something I'm gonna also have to look into more, because there was a couple times in Black Ops where the Vietnam mission looked a little washed out, but I also couldn't tell if that was intentional or not because of the whole 80s aesthetic and the Vietnam era that they use in a lot of types of movies like that and everything.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
I've given up on trying to figure that out at this point.
My big test for HDR is going to be when I play Gears 5, because I've looked at Digital Foundry's videos on it, and the HDR implementation in Gears 5 looked amazing. So
Yeah.
I'm going to have to give that one a try, see how it looks.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
I think
with that
does it.
Yeah, I think that's the show. Did I mention the Game Awards already? Did we talk about that? Okay, all right. We already talked about the Game Awards. We're gonna try to do a year in review. We're not going to review the year because the year sucked. We're gonna just review the year in as we always do, games, movies, TV, and all of that.
I was gonna propose this to you all.
Yeah.
I was thinking for our top 10 thing that we do every year. I think, and this would really bend the rules, but I think with the context of the way this year was, I think it should be top 10 of the year for us of what we played.
Of what we consumed.
Of what we consumed.
Not just...
The timeline is not specific.
So like if we play, or like if we watched a movie from the 80s this year that we really liked, and it was our first time watching it, I think that I think especially because this year a lot of people went through their back catalogs of just like stuff that they hadn't watched and whatnot. Right. I think that's a good idea. So like if you watched a show that came out in 2015 this year, or played a game that came out in 2010 or something like that, I think that's a good idea.
Do we want to wait until Wonder Woman comes out? Because I don't know if that's going to make any of our lists or not.
I'm pretty sure it's going to make it would make our list, but I think we should go ahead and make our list, and kind of what we did last year is make revisions to it if possible.
That's the only thing I can see. Yeah, that's the only new thing I could see possibly changing my list at any point by the end of the year.
Yeah, I think that's the and I do want to get it out before Christmas
Mhm.
if possible. And obviously, we're definitely looking to get a mod back for that as well. So we'll but yeah, we're definitely planning on doing that. We're also going to be skipping next week, so we're guaranteed to not have an episode this coming Saturday. um and but then again, we are confirmed to be doing the live stream for the Game Awards at 7.
Yeah.
So
So it's only a 2 to 3 day delay.
yeah, it's not. Yeah, no, you're not going to be without your lab rats for very long.
Mhm.
You are, but yeah, we aren't going to be having sort of your regularly scheduled podcast. Although calling it regularly scheduled is maybe too generous. But yeah, I think that basically wraps it up. Obviously, we're gonna, as the year wraps up, we're gonna be doing, our typical year-end stuff, and then going into next year, I think it's really going to depend on everybody's schedules. But I'm not super busy, so
Mhm.
uh, so you don't need to necessarily worry about me
Mhm.
going away anytime soon, even though that was certainly the plan. um, uh, but yeah, it's definitely like we're definitely still in like a phase where not
Mhm.
all of us have super consistent schedules all the time. So
Mhm.
it's um so yeah, it'll for at least a little while longer until the summer comes. It'll be a little uh spontaneous,
Mhm.
but we'll definitely still be trying to get content out to you guys. And and part of this is just, we have a good time doing it, so we do
Mhm.
it, and that's kind of the end of story. So um I think we can all say that if 0 people listened to this, we would still do it.
Yep.
And we do have some people who listen to it, so
Mhm.
that's just like an added bonus. So
And thank you.
Yeah,
yeah,
for
thank
sure.
you. And thank you for listening, for joining us on this, crazy ride. I
Mhm.
hope that especially this year, I've always appreciated just like 2 hours that
Mhm.
don't where, my thoughts kind of disappear into the void and they're filled by other people's musings.
Talking
Um
about Star Wars.
yeah, exactly. And so, there's something to be appreciated about that. And if we can provide some of that to you, then all the better for it.
Mhm.
But I think with that, Sawyer, will you rattle off the social medias and then the platforms as well?
Sure. So you can find us on Twitter at Cascade, at CASTCATE, because of our old handle. But you can find us just by searching for the Lab Rats Entertainment Podcast. And you can find us on Instagram at the Lab Rats Podcast. There's no entertainment on the Instagram one because it's weird. And if you follow us on Twitter, you will get a notification every single time a new episode goes up on Podbean. And you can find us, in addition to Podbean, on wherever you're listening now, such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Twitch, Stitcher, and what's the 7th one?
YouTube.
YouTube. That's right.
All good.
All right. All right. I think we got it. And yeah, Caleb, did you have anything you wanted to plug?
um, be on the lookout for some stuff. We're
Yeah.
we're, we're working on some specials. Hopefully.
Yeah, we're still looking to get that Kingdom Hearts music
Mhm.
special out the door at some point. It's gonna be like the wait for Kingdom Hearts 3, except potentially even longer.
Oh no,
Uh,
no, no, no.
um, but
We got
all
some cool
jokes
things in the
aside,
works.
yeah, we have some stuff in the works. So
Mhm.
with with any luck, all of these things that we have in the work will, come to pass, and that's definitely, we have a lot of ideas. It's just about getting them into the show. Um, but yeah, I think with that, Sawyer, did you have anything you wanted to plug?
I don't think so. Off the top of my head, if I do, I'll probably just have us tweet it out.
That is also up. Like Sawyer said, follow our Twitter. You get the show and you get any like random updates. I have no control over the Twitter, and I have not looked at the Twitter, so I feel about as like removed from it as I possibly could be, which is a good thing because you hear I'm the one who gives you all of the updates on the show itself, and then these guys kind of can.
Well, it's primarily become Caleb's responsibility now.
Yeah.
I don't do Twitter.
The other day,
Yeah.
I was tweeting about the Mandalorian on my Twitter, and I'm like, should I retweet this? Just because I'm like, on one hand, with our Twitter, I'm like, it'd be fun to do like small reviews and stuff on Twitter,
Yeah.
but I'm like, that might be. I want the spirit of our reviews more on the show itself, so I was like,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
50-50 about it. Let's just
Yeah,
put
I
it that
think
way.
that like I think if the way that I view the Twitter is that it's um it's obviously good to have, and then it functions more as just like another branch of where
Mhm.
people can find us. It's not something that we necessarily
Right.
use to like do our own thing with it.
Mhm.
It is like a method by which people can find us, because I know that like a
Exactly.
lot of people maybe don't like YouTube systems, and they don't have like an Apple machine, so podcasts are kind of weird on their phone or whatever, like whatever it is. But then like the Twitter thing is super simple for them to just use to get a link to our show or whatever. And so that is like how I think about most of our platforms. Actually, any social media platform that we have, that's like the way that I think about it. And then any other thing, like I said, is just an added bonus. um so yeah, like, follow us on Twitter. If you tweet at us, we'll certainly take notice of it and respond. It's not like we're not paying attention to the Twitter at all, obviously. But that is definitely like the current way in which I think about Twitter. Is like, it's good to have, and it's a really good branch out into a larger community. Maybe in a way that like Facebook and other such social media platforms maybe aren't, like they don't have that same pull. Um, Whereas Twitter is just like really easy to implement and reaches a large number of people.
Yeah.
So with that, bye.
Bye.